Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to call the Comox Valley Regional District regular board meeting of Tuesday, August 9th to order. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. And as we walk our path toward reconciliation, we will talk about the call to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, calls to action report. Today, we are on call to action number 10, which is education. We call on the federal government to draft new Aboriginal education legislation with the full participation and informed consent of Aboriginal peoples. The new legislation would include a commitment to sufficient funding and would incorporate the following principles. 1, providing sufficient funding to close identified educational achievement gaps within one generation. 2, improve education attainment levels and success rates. 3, developing culturally appropriate curricula. 4, protecting the right to Aboriginal languages, including the teaching of Aboriginal languages as credit courses. 5, enabling parental and community responsibility, control, and accountability, similar to what parents enjoy in public school systems. 6, enabling parents to fully participate in the education of their children. And 7, respecting and honoring treaty relationships. Thank you. And with that, I will pass it over to our CAO for an introduction.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. And it is with pleasure that I introduce to you our new Chief Financial Officer of the Comox Valley Regional District, Lisa Bartjerk. Lisa comes to us from the community of Airdrie, a city just northwest of Calgary, where her peers and those that work with her talk about her excellence in terms of professionalism, accountability, transparency, her willingness and ability to work with communities and work well with the leadership of those communities. Initially, Lucy came from Thunder Bay, where she also worked in the private sector and has experience in that. She has moved to the Comox Valley with her husband, and she has 3 grown children. And I don't know whether you realize this, but almost every chief financial officer of this regional district has had 3 children. It seems to be a requirement, but I really welcome Lucy. She's sitting directly behind Director Arbor and will be ultimately presenting to you a lot of financial information and responding to your needs as we move forward. So welcome, Lucy.
Thank you very much and welcome. Okay, next we're on to actually a request from Director Grieve to vary the agenda. We will be moving item G3, which is bylaw 730, the noise control bylaw, up to the front of the agenda. Oh, go ahead, Director Grieve.
No, you took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Okay, and is there a second for that? Director Hamir, thank you. And all in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. So we will go to item G3. Thank you. So this is bylaw number 730, electoral area noise control bylaw. It's amendment number 3, and this is giving it first and second reading, moved by Director Grieve, seconded by Director Grant. And it is a vote of the areas. All in favor? That's unanimous. And there's for third reading.
Third.
Well, that was in unison. I can't tell who was first. So Grieve and Grant. And again, a vote of the areas for third reading. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, and I'll allow the gallery to exit if they wish. Okay, so that brings us back to C, adoption of minutes, and we have the minutes from the regular board meeting of July 26th. Hillian and Swift, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we are on to reports. First, we have the Comox Valley Emergency Program Administrative Committee minutes from July 14th. McCollum and Hillian, thank you. And is there any discussion around those minutes? Does staff wish to comment on them at all? Nope, okay. So it's a vote of full board for receipt of minutes. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next, we're on to item 2, permissive tax exemption for Sunnydale Golf Society. Hillian and McCollum, thank you. And is there discussion on those? Director Hamir, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I think last year we had asked the golf course to come and present and just give us a bit of information on, how many members they have and what kind of activities, the level of their activity. I can understand due to COVID if they weren't comfortable, but I'm just wondering if we can ask that of them because I recall saying something to the effect that, I really want to relook at this based on how many people are using Sunnydale Golf Course. It's hard to tell. So maybe for the next time around, if that can be made clear to them that, we would like to know what the impact of this golf course, and it may be amazing. And it's probably a really good news story about how many volunteers and people participate in the golf course, but it's kind of a bit of a black box right now. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Director. And to staff, can we reach out?
Yes, Madam Chair, we will reach out and invite them as a delegation.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, any further discussion? On receipt, all in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously, and there's a recommendation. Killian moved. Anyone second? Swift, thank you very much. And that is that we adopt the permissive tax exemption for 100% of the taxable land and improvements. Any further discussion? A vote of full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? It's carried unanimously, and we're on to item 3, the permissive tax exemption for Union Bay Historical Society. Arbor and McCollum, thank you. And any discussion? Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. They didn't come and present to ESC or here, but I did attend their AGM and it was awesome. What a great group, doing a lot for the community, managing really important buildings and activities. So I have absolutely no problem supporting the exemption, and I expect we continue to have a great relationship with the society in the future.
Great, thank you for the background. Any further discussion? Okay, we're on receipt. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Hillian and Arbor are moving the recommendation that we also approve the tax exemption for 100% of the net taxable land and improvements. It's a vote of the full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we're on to item 4, which is director's leave of absence policy. Arbor and Hamir, thank you. And I will pass it to staff.
Madam Chair, this follows up from considerations given by the board to its remuneration and enabling the opportunities for directors in the future to have these benefits and opportunities. The report is provided for your consideration and recommendation. If you do have any questions specific to it, James Warren is here to answer that.
Okay, thank you. So open to the board for questions. Director Moran, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Chair. My understanding is that currently all members of, or the majority of the board would need to approve a leave of absence for a director. And so would this policy then make that automatic? Is that enough of a question? I know this has come up in other jurisdictions, and other jurisdictions have streamlined it so that the board didn't have to vote on whether they could take some leave for parenting.
Does that?
That's exactly the case. The current legislation does require a board approval for such leave. This policy would enable that for the situations noted in the policy, parental care and family care.
That's
Sorry, parental care and compassionate leave.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't attach any financial obligation. And I just am really happy to see it come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we're on receipt. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Is carried, and there is a recommendation. Grant and Hamir, thank you. And it's that the director's leave of absence policy be approved. Any further discussion? It's a vote of the full board, all in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we're on to item 5, the Electoral Area Service Committee from August 8th.
Move the recommendation.
Grant and Hamir, thank you. And it's a 3-year agreement with an additional 2-year extension between the Comox Valley Regional District and Hornby Island Residential Ratepayers Association be approved. Any further discussion? Okay, it's a vote of the full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We're on to bylaws and resolutions for first, second, and third reading. First, we have 727, which is the Regional District Property Tax Exemption Bylaw.
Move first and second.
Moved by Grieve and seconded by Grant for the Sunnydale Golf Course exemption. And so it's a vote of the full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried.
And move third reading.
Grant and Hillian moving third. Vote of full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. And we're on to item 2, which is bylaw 728, the property tax exemption bylaw for Union Bay Historical Society.
Move first and second.
Grant and Arbor have moved first and second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Second.
Hillian and Arbor moved third. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously again, and we've already done item 3 as it was moved to the front of the agenda. So we are on to bylaws for adoption. Item 4, bylaw number 731 is the
731 for adoption.
remuneration and expenses bylaw, moved by Grieve, seconded by McCollum. Vote of the full board. All in, oh, there is a question. Director Arbor, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm starting to have a change of hearts on that bylaw and I'm even against it. So I guess we did a bit of work and this is the 3rd time where it comes around. And in the interim, I have actually witnessed, I think we've all witnessed what's happened in municipal world around increases to councillors and mayors. And it feels like regional district is being left behind a little bit in terms of remuneration when you look at the responsibilities of electoral area directors in particular. The second part is I guess something that I was actually online, so my apologies, I didn't follow and I think I even cut out when I come back last time we had the discussion, but we didn't end up putting remuneration for chairs of committees, which I think I'd advocated for a number of months ago. And instead we have augmentation or a new entrenched one for the vice chair of the regional district. And I think we've been blessed with the work of our chair and vice chair the last 3 years with Dr. Hamir as vice chair and Chair Kentler. But the inconsistency, I guess, is we're proposing to put in 7,500 for the vice chair position. But when I reviewed the policy for the roles and responsibilities of board and vice chair under our policy, there are no responsibilities for the vice chair that are identified. All the responsibilities are assigned to the chair. In other words, while we've been blessed with Dr. Hamir, we could end up with a board where the vice chair doesn't attend weekly meetings, doesn't look after the waste management, doesn't do all these extra things and gets the 7,500, whereas chairs that are really active, for example, listening to Director Hillian chair the sewage commission, overseeing a $100 million project, gets nothing. So I don't think we've gotten this bylaw right. I know we ended up dancing around some of the secondary item, but I don't feel right supporting it. So I'll be voting. I won't be voting in favor of adoption today. Thanks.
Can I have staff come up and talk about how that discussion went around remuneration of committee chairs?
Sure, thanks, Chair. The bylaw does currently, it's not an annual remuneration for committee chairs. There is a stipend provided for the conduct of presiding over committee meetings. If you give me a second, I can identify the rate that is there for conducting such meetings by the chairs of all the committees. I don't actually recall there being a discussion at board table about compensation or a remuneration for committee chairs on an annual basis. The consideration was certain for the vice chair, and that is as noted. With respect to a policy specific to the vice chair itself, that is something that with board direction we could take a look at developing such a policy, and it could be aligned with the chair roles or in a supporting role based on the experience that we've been seeing.
Okay. So because we're at adoption stage, we could put this through at this time and come back with an amendment at a future date.
Certainly, if that's the board's direction.
Director Hamir. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And I actually want to thank Director Arbor for pointing it out, because I guess, you know, I was vice chair. I've been vice chair for 4 years, because I was vice chair with Bob, with Mayor Wells as well. And it was a bit of a make it up as you go along, because there weren't really many, you know, details of what the job of the vice chair would be. So I just want to pick up where staff, or where this last conversation went, that maybe outlining some of those roles would be helpful to a new vice chair, so that they know what's expected of them. I still will vote in favor of adoption, because I think moving it forward, I don't think, you know, those roles can, if they can just be added on as amendment, would be great. But I do agree that maybe a bit more clarity to that role would be really helpful for a new vice chair.
And so what document would we be amending for roles and responsibilities for vice chair?
I would take a look at the policy that describes the board chair's roles and responsibilities, and whether it is appropriate to include some language in there to expand upon that role, or something specific to the vice chair. I think right now there are policies on the chair, electoral area directors, and municipal directors. I think there might be 3 policies. So it may be appropriate to have a 4th policy, or it might be appropriate to roll that into the role of the chair. I'd have to take a look at what the existing policy framework is.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have alternate director Theos.
Well, thank you for the chair for allowing me to speak. I did sit as a vice chair for a few years, I believe, and in that role, I remember the only duties I recall, because there wasn't an opportunity where the chair was away and I had to fill in for the chair that at any particular time. But I remember there was weekly meetings just for agenda setting, and really that was the only thing that I remembered that we were required to do as vice chair at that time, going back a few years now. But curious to know if that role has expanded since then, but also what are other regional districts doing in that regard? Are there any other regional districts that I'm sure you had that discussion in the past about what the other regional districts are doing, and do they compensate the vice chairs? Thank you.
So we undertook a review of some of our market comparators, other local governments that have similar size and range of services. And the outcome of that was the recommendations put forward for the remuneration bylaw. Generally speaking, the remuneration of this CVRD is aligned with those market comparators, plus or minus, within a reasonable range, I think. And on the role of vice chair, I think it's a bit of a mix. There's some regional districts that are either providing a stipend or some sort of recognition for the vice chairs, and others who are not. Historically, traditionally, we haven't had that in this regional district.
Thank you, Jane.
Thanks. Dr. Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. That's kind of what raised my little flag is, the policy document is actually called under file 034050, roles and responsibilities, board chair and vice chair. The document is 3 pages long, but it does not again mention vice chair in the entire document. So basically there are no responsibilities. So if the board passes that, I'd recommend that the board also accompany under new business for staff to look at an amendment to the board chair and vice chair that would identify what that remuneration could compensate. And in regards to James' comment around, not recalling the committee chairs, that was early on, because I remember making that comment when we were hiring a consultant, I believe. I don't think we said a consultant again, but I think we hired somebody to do a piece of work around scoping out. And then we left comments at that meeting, and that was one of my comments. I never turned it into a motion, so I appreciate why it would get lost. But definitely in regards to vice chair, and I would say that. And in regards to the comparative, that's fine, but I think the comparative that's missing is probably what's happening to wages of councillors and mayors in relation to regional districts. I think we like to compare regional district to regional district, but when you look at the responsibilities of electoral area director, I'm sure I must apologize, but I think that they might be slightly more than those of councillors in communities nearby. Thanks.
Thank you. So we did have first and second for adoption. Yes. And to vote the full board. Any further discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. And new business. Director Hamir?
Sure. I'll make a motion to ask staff to come back with a report outlining amendments to the role of the amendments to the policy regarding vice chair and chair roles that include specific roles for the vice chair.
Seconded by Grieve. Any further discussion? Any input from staff? No, good. All right. Oh, Director Grieve, go ahead.
Yes, thanks very much, Madam Chair. I also served 2 years as vice chair, and you act as a sounding board for the chair. You're pretty well up to speed on everything. So should the chair get sick or unavailable for a meeting, you don't need a lot of extra study. And that would have been 10 years ago, and I would dare say that the workload has increased by double since then. So I do think in this day and age to have a co-chair or a vice chair is absolutely essential. The chair took me on ministerial meetings down to Victoria and included me on all that stuff. And without that, I would never have had all the skills that I developed later when I was chair. So I think it's important that we do define a role for the vice chair, and because I think it's an integral part of the operation of this board. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Grieve. Yeah, and I definitely agree. I think that it maybe has been a little bit unique this term, but the role of chair has more been a co-chairing position as opposed to chair and vice chair, and quite invaluable to me. Ardina has been quite invaluable to me as vice chair. So yeah, I definitely support the adoption, which we have done. And also I support having those criteria put into a policy so that the next person coming into that role has a clearer idea of what it contains. So yes, any further discussion? Oh, Director Moran, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just curious if the chair did have to be away for an extended period, health issue or something like that, would the vice chair only be compensated at that 7,500, or would they be compensated more if they were basically going into that role because the chair is completely, you know, in the hospital or having cancer treatments or whatever? Thanks.
Yeah, to staff, go ahead.
My understanding is that the remuneration bylaw would only compensate at that vice chair level and the additional remuneration for presiding over meetings that's already named in the bylaw.
But again, I think there is the opportunity to have a discussion about that outside of policy, because as the board knows, I've given up some compensation to the vice chair in order that she take on the solid waste co-chair position, but also the additional meetings that we do together and the support that she's provided.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it is good to have a mechanism there, because we, there is the potential for the vice chair to have to, you know, take on a significant load. I mean, that's, I would say, one of the main reasons that we have vice chairs, for those kind of circumstances. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Don't see any further discussion. So we have the motion up on the screen. That staff prepare a report regarding amendments to the policy regarding chair and vice chair roles, outlining specific roles of the vice chair. Any further discussion? It's been first and seconded. Vote is full board. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And we don't have in camera, so adjournment by Hillian and McCullum. All in favor? Thanks so much. Hope you all have a good afternoon.